really fun activity plans. We're going to be screening some LinkedIn profiles since you had gotten your position as vice president through LinkedIn, which I think that's modern day technology right there. That's modern networking right there. So we're going to take a look at 2 LinkedIn profiles. One, we're going to take a look at an ad PR student. And then we're going to look at someone who has been more into the industry, more as a professional, right? So let's start off with the first LinkedIn. Let me just share my screen real quick. And so here we have Francini, who is our vice president at CCNY. Hey, girl.
Hey.
And so I'll just scroll down through this and you can tell me like what you think worked here and what you think didn't work, what needs improving, and etc.
Yeah, I love the cover image. So I'll just say that. So I love LinkedIn and thank you for doing this. This is fun. So right off the bat, one of the things I would recommend, so you see the title, sucks for anyone listening, but when you're on a profile and right underneath your name, you have your title, right? And right now, Francini says Vice President, CCNY AAF Student Chapter. I love that. Everyone's going to know that that's your big current role. However, if someone's searching for, I'm making this up because I don't know what Francini's passionate about, but let's say it's advertising. If someone's looking for someone fresh out of college that is super interested in advertising, Francini might not come up because her title isn't necessarily optimized for search. So this is where I'm going to go to my obsession with search. LinkedIn is just like Google. Think of it like Google. Websites that rank number 1 on Google rank because they have really good page titles, which if you know SEO or any of that, happy to talk about that another day. What I have learned and that I do think works for recruiters and for networking is that line should actually be treated as more of like what your buzzwords are, like what your keywords are and what you're passionate about. So I think mine says, right, that I'm like an omni-channel person, I'm Latinx, I'm super social, I'm this and I'm that. Those are keywords that people might be searching on LinkedIn for. That doesn't mean that they won't know that you're a vice president at CCNY AAF chapter, but they might get to know a little more about like your experience and what you're passionate about if you can get those words into that specific title. So I definitely recommend that because then they'll come to your profile and they'll see in your experience that that's where you work. So I love this. I love a good filled out about section. And I should I'm not an HR person, people. So I happen to really love LinkedIn and love to keep it optimized. And I do love helping people with their LinkedIn. So for what that's worth, I think a solid about section is really good. What I would think about, and I don't know the stats on this, I imagine LinkedIn is predominantly used on desktop, but let's say it was mobile. Is it too much text? Like, is it quick to read? Is it too much? I would consider a balance of like who you are, what you do, what you're passionate about. But then, can you maybe bullet out a couple of things that make it a little easier to read? Think about like quick moments for people to understand what you do, what you've learned, what you want to do, and what you're going to contribute to their team or to their role if they're looking to fill it in. Love the feel free to connect. I don't have that on mine. I always trust that like, they're going to click more and find my email, but that might not be the case. So that's good. That activity section better be popping. So it only shows me 4. We don't have to click into that, but I highly recommend posting often, sharing what you're working on, sharing that you're networking. LinkedIn's algorithm is not as sophisticated right now, I would say, like as a Facebook or as a Google. So hashtags are like a huge way to really get like visibility on your content. So definitely always look into like trending hashtags on LinkedIn. Awesome. So now we're into experience. So I love this. So here's what I'll say. Because I'm not an HR person, I can't tell you like every job's going to be different, whether they're going to want to export your LinkedIn profile or, use your resume specifically. But I do think whether you're pulling content that's in your resume and putting it on LinkedIn or vice versa, you should definitely beef this up. Whether it's just a couple sentences of what your role is and what you do, or if it's just using the ability to add media to the job, right? So that's one thing on mine. I've been in digital. It's a little easier. Everything I work on has a link, so I can add it. but you'd be surprised. I mean, you can upload any kind of link. So if you wrote a press release, upload it somewhere and then put the link there so people can see it. It's definitely becoming a little bit more visual. So yeah, retail sales consultant AT&T. This is awesome. Super robust. I maybe just think about, are there ways to shorten it? You know, is there any redundancy in there at all? And there might not be. Sorry, I'm not reading it thoroughly at a glance. But this is awesome. And I definitely recommend, you know, for college students too, like, don't hesitate to put those roles that are like not careers or like not internship stuff, because you're learning people skills, you're learning soft skills, like you're still learning in these other roles. So I love that Francini has all of those jobs on there. And education, love it. Skills and endorsements are always good. So I don't know how much endorsements kind of apply to that whole kind of search algorithm, if you will. But I always like to give it to people. Like if someone really, you know, it usually pops up, you can like flag someone to be really good at something. If I know that they are, I'll usually flag it. You can add more there. And then the other big section I like is accomplishments. Yep. So I would always recommend keeping accomplishments as robust as you can, right? So this is kind of my point above. If you could like bold text or like, you know, have quick hits in the about section, it's because you want something that kind of looks like this, right? You look at this right away, you know that she's gotten honors and awards and it's quick hits. You know them right there. You know her languages and you know what organizations she's a part of. This is the kind of stuff, you know, that's usually in like your extracurricular hobbies and skills and things like that on your resume. Definitely bring them over to LinkedIn. I love it. I think Francini's like halfway there.
I'm sure she got like a lot of useful tips from that. We're going to jump over to the professional LinkedIn, or, you know, whatever you want to call it. And this is our very own Professor Javier Garcia. And I know that you have a special relationship with him. He is actually what we call our executive producer on the podcast. And he's our faculty advisor. And he's been a lot of fun and a lot of, you know, very helpful. And he's actually was our first guest on the podcast. So I think it's full circle here. Let's just jump up. Okay, here we are.
Mr. Javier. He has a lot of experience as well. Love the bold cover. I do recommend cover images. I heard that they're launching like video cover images soon, or like a lot more video content on the platform. So definitely look out for that. I think his title might be a lot. He's got a lot going on there, but it's not a bad thing. Again, it looks like it's a mix of, see, his second line is kind of what I was referring to about your title, right? He's saying he's an instructional designer, a content creator, an enabler of excellence, right? It's those descriptors. He also has his title in there, so it's just a little longer. But that's a good example of like, what are those descriptors? This is redundant, but also very long. I mean, I think I personally might not read all of it, but I know he has great experience, and I always recommend adding a little bit of personality. So whether it's in the cover image or in your headshot profile pic or in the about section, I think mine has like a whole thing about my lame hobbies. So I definitely recommend that. He's got a lot of followers, so I imagine he has plenty of activity. Yeah, and then he breaks this all out. I think in both cases, I know it's hard to maybe figure out like what your supporting media can be by job, you know, but as much as you can bring some visual to LinkedIn, right? So both Javier and I, you know, our job description sections are like so long. I don't know who's going to sit and go through all of it, if HR people do or not, but I think if you ever have a visual way of kind of explaining everything you do, it's definitely gonna, I think, resonate for more visual people like myself. I am not an HR person. Yeah, like I remember his Suyo group stuff. He needs to put pictures of that. Or websites. Oh my gosh, SSNK.
It's actually really good.
Bringing back memories.
Because like when we were looking at your LinkedIn, the points of it being very visual, your LinkedIn was so visual. Like it had links to all of your websites and everything. It just looked aesthetically like very pleasing. Because it almost felt like a portfolio.
Yeah. And I think, you know, it's interesting. I've been thinking about creating my own portfolio separately from LinkedIn because, you know, there's only so much you can ultimately show, right? You put more than 3, now you have to scroll. Like there's a balance of how much information you can provide and what people are going to digest. Does it need to be a carbon copy of your resume? I don't think so, because they can get that from your resume. I think honestly, it's kind of like, think about it as like a marketing strategy for yourself. Like I'm big on personal branding. Like when you want someone to think about you, Alex Suazo, what do you want them to do? I want them to go to Google. Hopefully a website of mine or a portfolio comes up before anything else, but I haven't launched it yet, so that's not going to happen. Maybe then it's LinkedIn and they'll go there next. And maybe from LinkedIn, then they'll see my resume, So like, think about that consumer journey, in air quotes for people that can't see my video. Like, what do you want that like recruiter journey to look like, and set it up. Like, you can absolutely, like, air quotes, dictate that a little bit by what you have out there about yourself, what you post, what you share.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, like the consumer journey, like how they experience it, because you don't really often think about it that way, like formatting anything, like a resume, a cover letter, or, a LinkedIn, a portfolio. Think about it in the terms of like how the consumer experience. And I even mentioned that in your product, like digital marketing, how the consumer like experiences through digital aspects and also digital aspects. So I think that's a really great point to put up.
Yeah, I mean, guys, like, we're marketers. Like, just think of yourself as a product. It sounds ridiculous, but I mean, that's what you're doing, right? Like,
right, the whole branding and stuff.
I mean, selling yourself, I'm not, that has a lot of different connotations, but like, think of yourself as a product. Who are you? What are you selling? What are you selling? Figure out a way to talk about it, figure out what those main descriptors are, and then build out your marketing strategy. A big thing for me was to finish that portfolio while I was unemployed, and I was lazy and didn't do it. I got very fortunate that I was like, referred to this other role. But that's a key for me. Like, I still want to very much launch that. And to me, it's like, I want you to see a snippet of my experience on LinkedIn. My Instagram and Twitter are public. I want you to see my personality on LinkedIn and Instagram. And then I want you to really see like all of me on, a portfolio. So like, I have a portfolio with a professional section, but then there's a whole section about how I've been making Snapchat filters for years, and how I've been like editing content for years and making scrappy YouTube videos, so just figure out what your story is and how you want to sell it,
We've reached the end over here. It says the end of his
Javier's. Yes, you've been scrolling for a while. He has a lot of experience.
He has a lot of content.
He has a lot like, as well.
Fingers slowly, like on the mouse pad.
He has a lot. One of the things I was going to say too is, when you stay at a job and move around like that, I definitely recommend always putting the different job changes. So I will say, he had one section there, whether it was like an agency or something, but showing that growth. I think whether you do that on your resume or on LinkedIn, like even Francini, like if she started in a different role before being vice president of AAF, right? And I think she had it, like, break out those other roles and figure out what that one bullet is that was different from your last role, that's different in your current role, You should all have a link to this podcast as like a media link on your LinkedIn if you don't already, and then people can get an example of like the kind of content you're producing.
All right, so that concludes the end of our little activity. I hope you had a good time.
I did. I love looking at LinkedIn. Is that so lame? So lame.
No, it's not. It's not. Actually not.
Well, thank you so much for your time and your influential knowledge about the industry. And thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you guys.
Yep. We'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you so much for joining us, Alex, again. And yeah, this has been a lot of fun, and I'm sure a lot of people will take a lot of things that you had said. We cannot wait for this to go live, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Thank you guys.
Thank you guys for tuning in with Where We Fit, a podcast celebrating the unique paths and voices of the marketing and communications industry. Brought to you by the CCNY AAF Student Chapter. Make sure to follow us on our Instagram accounts for all the latest updates at Where We Fit Pod and at AAF City College. We'll see you in the next episode.